It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by Agile Dad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. Okay, I'm certain all of you have read the 12-step program by now, but just in case you haven't, if you've lived under a rock forever, the question still comes up about where does a Scrum project manager fit into Agile? And this drives me crazy because the term project manager, just by itself, indicates that you are talking about traditional project management. I hear people say, oh, there's agile project managers. Not really. Usually, an agile project manager is something different. So, I guess the question at hand is, are we looking at roles, or are we looking at titles, or are we looking at accountability? So, we're back there again. So, roles, accountabilities, and title, in case you haven't done an acronym there, it's figuring out your rats. Yes, roles, accountabilities, and titles. Some people like to refer to this as role mapping. So there was an article that was recently published. I'm going to keep the author out of it because I don't know that I agree with everything the article says. So here we go. It says, as companies progressively adopt Scrum as their preferred project management framework over traditional waterfall approaches, the subject of role mapping becomes critical. Well, of course it does. In fact, if you want to dig in a little further, I call this out as number 2 in my 12-step program. So I'm sorry, number 3 in my 12-step program. So obviously this is something that's important to me as well, right? If I list it as number 3, obviously it's something important. But one of the biggest challenges organizations face when they move to Scrum is, where does the Scrum project manager or Agile project manager fit in? So we're so used to the role project manager that we forget that this is a title and doesn't necessarily specify a position in an organization. All right, let's pause there. If you have a project management office, a PMO, and you tell them that there's no such thing as a project manager, they're not going to be very happy with you because, well, they are a project management office. And what do? They help coordinate and help align project managers on projects. Go figure. So I think part of the problem doesn't rest in the fact that you have project managers. Part of the problem rests in the fact that you haven't aligned all the other roles and accountabilities yet. So it's one of these things where you have traditional PMOs, you have traditional leadership rankings and rank and file, you have traditional projects being delivered, traditional budgeting, traditional onboarding. I think you see where I'm going with this, but you want to do agile project management. You need to kind of get past and say, okay, if I'm doing everything else, traditional, how well is the agile piece going to fit into the puzzle? And the term project manager has just become so common that people are permanently designated as the project manager. And you have to understand that a project manager is not necessarily a permanently held designation for an organization. It's a role that a person plays on a particular project when they are managing that project. And once again, I still feel like this person could be a product manager, or a service manager, or a delivery manager. I don't want to get hung up on titles, is what I'm trying to say here. A person may have the necessary skill set to manage a project, but they're not really a project manager in that project until they illustrate that that's what they're trying to do. So the role of project manager is defined by the responsibilities performed in that project, and a named individual is playing that role. So if you're in that transitioning phase where you're trying to transition from from waterfall to agile, or to Scrum specifically, a lot of people make the mistake of taking that project manager role and just trying to say, hey, let's fit that project manager role into our Scrum setting, and let's just push these people into the product owner role or into the Scrum master role, which is even a bigger mistake, because these people have different skill sets than a traditional Scrum master or product owner. If you're trying to find synergy across those roles, you're going to be terribly mistaken. In fact, the numbers show, and this was a study that I did way back in the day, and I did it with Deloitte, and we discovered it was just under 10%. It was like 9.8% of project managers became Scrum masters and were effective. Now, it doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means it's rare. Usually, project managers become part of either the product owner or the functional analyst. Occasionally, they'll become a BA, but not typically. And most of the people are not technical, so they don't lean in towards the technical analyst side. But these people have a much better home to fit in a Scrum Master position. In fact, over 70% are either POs or FOS. So it kind of lines up that way more than anything. And I think that if you think of this person, you take your best ones, your best project managers, the ones that really have it all together, and you can put them in, more of the measuring performance and delivery role, right? Where they're doing more of a portfolio level project management. You want to take your creme de la creme of project managers and give them release management or program management designation so that they can make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed at the highest levels of project management. Then you want to take your 10% and allocate those to Scrum Master positions. About 70% either become a product owner or a functional analyst, and then some leave the company and move on to where they can use their traditional project management skills elsewhere. But I think that if you consider it this way, the traditional product or project manager from waterfall or from traditional non-agile approaches definitely has a place in an agile framework. It's just not in a position that you might initially think that they should do. And I think the main message here should be that we should be separating people from their titles, from their roles and accountabilities. If we could do that, that's going to help us succeed with Agile. That's going to do it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have a topic you want us to discuss, learn more at agiledad.com. We would love to hear from you. And as always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.